everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Well, hello and welcome, Mind Hostage fans. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Stephen Payne. Today we have a very special guest, Ricardo Gonzales. Ricardo is an ordained Metaphysical Minister from the International Metaphysical Ministry University and Seminary. He's a certified metaphysical practitioner and holds a Bachelor in Metaphysical Science and is also a Riki Master. He works in the metaphysical community as a spiritual advisor, medium, and a tarot card reader. Ricardo specializes in angelic communications. Ricardo, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Thank you for welcoming me, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's a privilege to have you on today. It's really exciting, and this is going to be something really different than what we've had on the program before, but is definitely kind of a direction we're going, because one of the things that I found kind of in my spiritual journey is there's a bit of a spiritual awakening going on right now.
That is true. There's a big on Mother Earth right now. There's a lot of shifting taking place where people are actually moving from one thinking or one mentality, and they're starting to go in a different direction. And this vibration, if you really look at it, has been hidden for more than a year, but now the intensity is real strong. And this is why people are shifting right now, and they're moving on to different platforms, different ideas, different way of looking at things. So to me, it's a very good awakening that Mother Earth needs at this moment in time.
Well, that may be, kind of the journey that I'm on now is a fairly recent, I call it awakening. And, I was raised as a Southern Baptist, and, I was taught and believed a certain way. And, this journey that I'm on right now, I feel like doesn't take me away from God, but it takes me closer to God. It gives me what I feel like is a closer spiritual connection that I never found in church. And so, one of the things we'll talk about in a minute, after we talk a little bit about your background is, the breaking the stigma a little bit of the spiritual journey in metaphysics versus kind of the religious dogma that I was taught.
Yeah, and that's true. And a lot of people today, especially certain generations, they kind of have learned or seen that there's something beyond religion. And this is a tie that we all have. But it's something that's been around thousands of years. And what's really going on right now is people are really starting to look, there has to be something outside of religion. Or is there something outside of religion? So there's a lot of exploration that people are taking right now. And they're really starting to move forward with the idea, with the thinking, with the way they see things. And to me, I think that's a great awakening that the world is having. Your next door neighbor or friends, companions, relatives. And I think that is needed right now. We really need to see the platforms of spirituality in a certain way. And we really need to reintroduce ourselves on religion of what it's really about. And we really have to teach ourselves on how we can separate it, or do we separate it? And this is something that people are doing right now. So there's a lot of education, a lot of backgrounds, a lot of people asking those questions that we were afraid to ask 10, 20, 30, maybe 50 years ago.
Sure.
And now people are really starting to really ask, who is it, and what is it about? And how do I incorporate it in my life? Or do I incorporate it in my life? And this is what's really going on with Mother Earth right now. It's a very exciting time. I'm excited because of the work that I do and how I handle things and the different platforms that I work with and how I work with people. So I think it's really good. We need this. Mother Earth right now needs this. The individuals, the people, anything that you could see in that manner, they really need this awakening. And it's really starting to happen very good and thorough.
Now, before we kind of jump down that rabbit hole, you said something about background. So, Ricardo, if you don't mind, share a little bit about your background. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm, of course, everybody knows, my name is Ricardo. I was born and raised in Abilene, Texas. So I'm from West Texas. I'm a native Texan. The thing about me, I do list myself sometimes as a spiritual counselor or sometimes a psychic. When I was about 9 years old, I used to see something within the house, which what we call the spirit. But nobody really understood what I did or what I saw. And I remember my father would walk around with a bat trying to beat somebody up because he thought there was somebody in the home. And
like you really saw somebody.
Like I really saw somebody, yeah. And because I kept on seeing this man in the house, and of course, my parents and myself, we would just liven up and look around, and my dad's walking around with a bat trying to beat somebody up. When in reality, there was nobody there, just me, mom, and my dad, And I kept doing this over and over again. So it got to a point where my parents were going like, oh, whatever. He's going crazy. There's something else going on. But I kept seeing things. And I didn't have a real explanation behind it. So I kind of grew up with that mentality of seeing things or feeling the vibration or seeing what I thought was right. But nobody understood me. Nobody saw it that way.
Well, they must have thought, at that point that there was something wrong with you.
Of course.
That was tough.
Yeah, when you come from Abilene, Texas, anybody that doesn't talk from that aspect of religion, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
So it was very tough growing up. And then when I became in my teens, oh yeah, the energy, the power, the seeing became stronger.
Now, did you question yourself because of the way everybody felt?
I didn't question myself, but I felt very lonely. Because I felt that I'm the only one with this problem. Or I saw it as a problem.
Yeah.
It was a problem. And, the more and more I voiced my opinion, the more and more I said this is what I thought, people were like, yeah. They would laugh at me. What, you're going crazy. There's something wrong with you. And that was a lot of explanation. Now, there was times in my life where during that time period that I was very lonely, or I really spent a lot of time by myself. Because when I went to a person and saying, I'm seeing this, I'm hearing this, I'm seeing that, they couldn't believe me. They didn't know how to believe me.
Now, did you see that about them? Is that what it was you were
Yes, a lot of the conversations, you're very right. I would run into an old friend or maybe a relative, and I would say, oh my God, I see this that's going to happen in your life. And they would giggle and laugh at me and go, okay, whatever. And they would blow me off. So whenever my conversations happened with people when I was growing up, in my teens, in my early 20s, people were looking at me like, there's something wrong with you. But then I started questioning what I'm doing. And then I also tried to turn it around and go like, there's something wrong with you, because you don't understand me. And I was trying to get that understanding from people. So as I pursued and saw, I decided that I'm just going to keep doing this, whatever it was at the time. But I also got to a point when I was in my late teens to early 20s that I needed to investigate this. I wanted to see, am I really going crazy? Or is it just me seeing things in a different light? Or what is this about?
Sure.
So I decided to do the research. In my hometown, we had a public library, which is downtown Abilene. And I would literally close down the library and spend my weekends there and nights and evenings, anything that I could find, and try to find information on this, whatever it was.
Yeah, for the younger listeners,
Yeah.
I think we need to point out that we didn't have internet then.
That's right. We didn't have internet. We didn't have an iPod. We didn't have a cell phone at the time. We had phone booths.
Yeah.
And we had to travel to get our information. It didn't get delivered in our hands or by our computer at that time. So then I said, well, I'm going to look for it. So I spent a couple of hours going from session or segment to segment, and I found this subject line called cult, which this was what was called back in the 60s and 70s.
Oh, yeah.
They called it cult because it was something of the unknown, and that's how it was referenced. So I spent hours going through every book to try to find out what. And yes, I did go through the religion site. Because they had a big section on religion.
Now, at that point, now you say religion, I think a couple things real quick is when there's something that was unknown, it was something that was feared and therefore something that was shunned.
Correct.
You feel? But also, you at that point, were you raised in a particular religion?
Yes, I was raised Catholic.
Okay.
So, and yes, we did the Catholic thing. We would go to services every Sunday. We would go to Mass. We would do the actual prayers, the rosaries. The list goes on and on.
Okay.
Anything in Catholicism. So I was raised that way, but yet at the same time, there was something going on. I remember a storyline once that the Vietnam War was going on during that time period. Yes, I'm that old. Well, I do remember that time period of American history. And I remember we had a local priest, and he would have actually gatherings of people who would have the military or children of the military. And he would have everybody meet on the Wednesday night. So he would gather parents and anybody related to anybody of that source. And in my city, I would say maybe about 20% of the young men at that time were going to Vietnam War. Well, I'm bringing the story up because he kept on saying that he believed in faith, but he also said there's something around him. Now, of course, the energy, what we believe in spirituality, was probably surrounding him because he was hearing all the hurt and all the pain that was going on in that city. Yes, it was a small community at the time, maybe about 50 to 60,000 that lived in that city. I think there's about 180,000 nowadays. But we would go to this gathering. Well, all of a sudden this man disappeared, this priest disappeared. And we found out that he went into an insane asylum because he couldn't figure out what was pressuring him and what was around him.
Was that an empathic in nature?
Yes, that was an empathic in nature because of how he connected with spirit and religion and how he saw things. There was this big vibration was going with him. That kind of, I felt comfortable in a way because I knew, I felt it. You know, I knew something was in me too. And I felt like I wasn't alone at that time when I heard that and when that took place, which made me study harder and more sharper of what this is. So yes, he lost it. Yes, he committed suicide.
You think that's because of the pressure within his religion and how he felt maybe shunned or judged because of the way he was feeling?
Yes, he was feeling something that was around him. And of course, there was no real explanation at that moment in time. You know, it's very hard to tell people in the late 70s and 80s and even the 60s what this is. Because this was something that was not really put on the kitchen table when people would gather for dinner and have this discussion.
Right.
So when I heard these storylines of what happened to him, it really gave me that encouragement that I didn't feel bad for him. I felt the presence. I felt the feeling that he was going through. So it made me really want to encourage myself to learn more. So I really belted into this situation. So I finally got several books, and I remember seeing things of spirituality, things of connection, things of understanding what psychic abilities are and what mediumship is. And I felt like, bingo, I got my answers.
Somebody understands me.
Somebody understands me. And at that time, I literally felt not disconnected, but connected to somebody. I remember inside of one of the books, there was a business card in it. And it had an actual phone number. And it had a lady's name on it. Her name was Sally. And it was in this book. And something told me to call them. And yes, back then we didn't carry cell phones. So I had to find a phone booth to make a phone call and drop 2 quarters into this phone booth. And I remember having a conversation with her. And she had a group gathering. But the group gathering was in Brownwood, Texas, which is a small community outside of Abilene. Maybe a good 30, 45-minute drive from there. So I definitely went to the meeting. She invited me to go there. And I remember going to this old 2-story home. And I knocked at the door. And of course, I'm in fear mode because I don't know what this is about or what's going on. But I remember she opened the door and she introduced herself to me. And I went into her living room, and there was like 15 people sitting in this one room.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh my God, I felt like I was home. I felt like I was connecting.
You could just feel the energy.
Yes, oh my God, I felt connection. I felt energy. I felt people understood me. And I remember driving home after that meeting. I was literally crying home because I said, oh my God, there's somebody who understands me. There's a group.
Because until then, you were really, really alone.
Yeah, I was alone and lost, and I didn't know what was there about and what was going on.
Well, that's a good point. And again, we're going to go back to the fact that this is before the internet, and a lot of people take for granted now If you have a question about anything, if you fit into a certain category, if you want to associate with a certain group, it's at the tip of the keyboard.
Correct.
And we didn't have that then. And
No.
so you really were isolated.
Correct. Very isolated. My only reference of information was a public library. So that's the only way we did it. No, we didn't have the cell phone that you can quickly get information in about 5 seconds, or go home and go to a computer or get an iPod together. We didn't have that back then. Our only reference was word of mouth and a public library, and maybe if you knew people who knew people who knew people. That was it. So I really moved forward on it. And it got to a point where I met her. It was late spring, if I remember correctly. And they were having like monthly meetings. I made sure I was at that monthly meeting no matter what. And in that time period, they talked about blessings and spirituality and pendulums and incense and psychic abilities. And no, you're not going crazy. It is part of a gift. And everybody always asked me about gifts and services and things. I mean, they really introduced me to a lot of stuff. And I was literally there every Friday night. I moved to Austin, Texas, February 1st, 1987. And I knew very well that I needed to continue this exploration. So, of course, now I'm in the big city, you know. I went from Abilene, Texas to Austin, Texas.
Bigger library?
Bigger library, yes. And at that time, iPads and iPod and podcasting and computers, you know, and cell phones were being introduced to me. And I was like, wow, I could get information quickly. So, of course, I went through that training and experience, but I also knew that there had to be something out there. I couldn't imagine just that little small group of people. There had to be more people out there. So I did my investigation, and I found a school. No, it was not in Texas. It was in New Mexico. And I signed up for every class that I could think of. And yes, they had a degree plan that you had to be there, but also at the same time, since I was distanced, I spoke to a lot of counselors and administrators at the school and said, this is my problem and situation. So they really helped me. And I went after it. I mean, I flew in like 3 times a year just to make sure I got the credibility. Okay. I did everything that they told me to do. I did the writings and the lesson plans, and the list goes on and on.
So that was kind of more by correspondence at that time.
Yeah, true. But they called it distant learning. Right. That's what they actually called it. Well, as time progresses, after I did all the criteria and the credibility that they gave me, I was presented with a bachelor's in metaphysical science. Wow. And then after that, I asked the school, so what else can I get from y'all? And they said, well, we have a reverendship program that would be excellent for you. And I said, sign me up. I didn't ask a question or anything. I just said, sign me up. And they made me a reverend, a certified reverend. So I can do anything in that challenge right there.
Okay, so like before we move on with this, because you have a lot of information to share, but I want to stop there because we've said a few things I think that for many listeners are going to be really outside their understanding.
Okay.
And that is, first of all, you had this gift at the time that people felt like you were crazy or something was wrong with you. Yes,
that is correct.
And then you progressed to trying to do some research on this particular gift that you didn't know anything about.
Correct.
And you had to find information in the area of occult.
Correct.
And so because it wasn't widely known, because it wasn't understood, it was considered occult. And that's kind of where I want to go, because now you're talking about, you said spirituality, you said God, and now you're saying reverendship. And so for a lot of our listeners, like myself, that grew up in a specific religion and the dogma of that religion, that feels like, and what I was taught, that things of this nature were dark. Mm-hmm. And, you know, some of the people who are listening right now that may want to know more information about what's out there, about maybe a closer connection to God, a higher spiritual journey, but that it feels like that they're, you know, being judged, or that feels like based on what they taught that they're going down the wrong road. Tell me a little bit more about this reverendship and this walk that at one point people thought were part of the occult.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And shed some light. Let's break the stigma.
Correct. Now, As I was doing the research and doing more, I found out that in a bigger city, it was called Metaphysics.
Mm-hmm.
Metaphysics is basically an umbrella name for several of these processes that take place. Now, in humanity, if we don't have some kind of label, we will not understand it. So we got to a point where you really needed to learn what cult was and what metaphysics was.
Okay.
So the division started. One was in a cult situation, and the other one was in metaphysics. Now, where do we put what? As these people developing these processes, religion rights people, spirituality ministers, they saw that we had to give it a category. And the category was metaphysics. So what do we put under that umbrella? So there was an internal fight in culture of trying to see what was right and what was wrong. And multiple people from several religions, several people in spirituality, people who were in different dogmas, are trying to figure out where do we put what. So as the development of metaphysics, a lot of the cult was put under the umbrella of metaphysics.
Mm-hmm.
We also understood that you couldn't divide it, but you had to embrace it in a different understanding, a different definition, and a different way of looking at things. The people in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, if you said cult, they quickly saw that it was a dark side.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, at that time, there was a lot of control on the religious level and also control by other in humanity. So we had to get that stigma, we had to get that mentality thinking out of that, and then we moved it into metaphysics. It was more embraced in the late 70s and early 80s because people were really trying to see that in a different way.
Well, so it was what things are we talking about? That we're labeling as metaphysics.
Correct.
Give
Now,
me an idea what
okay.
that is.
Under the cult culture, if you were a psychic, they saw that as something that was given to you as a gift on the dark side.
I see.
Then what happened is there was an awakening in Mother Earth in about 60s and 70s, and people were going like, no, it's not that. So then they recreated the theory and the thinking, and they moved it onto metaphysics to give it more of a positive spin.
Now, who gives you this gift?
Gift is given to me by God,
Okay.
by higher spirit.
And that's where I want to go with this because, a lot of people, when you say dark side and cult or occult or things like that, but I want to make clear that that this journey, this gift, the path that you're on, this label, metaphysics, isn't taking you away from God. It's not satanic in nature. This is a gift given to you by God, the creator of earth, the creator of all of us.
Correct. And let me tell you my definition behind that. There's over 7 to 8 billion people on Mother Earth. And God is pretty busy. He has to deal with a lot of souls. But he needs help. So what he decided to do is send earth angels, people to help him. So this is people in the community of healing.
Okay.
Different types of healing for different types of services. So he gave these people a gift. And sometimes this gift is encouraged or given to you when you were born. Some people get it at the age of 5. Some people get it at the age of 60.
Mm-hmm.
But this is God's way of saying, I need help. I can't handle 7 to 8 billion people all by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of theorists, a lot of people in religion will go and bash me and go like, wait a minute, God can handle everything. True. But God will handle it in God's way, in God's definition, in God's vibration when he's ready.
So maybe by providing these gifts, it's just another way for him to verify the fact that his power and to give gifts through people, through humans, to be again to kind of verify to people that can't you see that people have the gifts to heal? They did in the Bible, by the way. The disciples.
Oh yeah. The disciples were a big encourager of healing.
Yeah.
Jesus was also a healer. If you would look at it, also his Mother Mary, was a big healer too. And throughout life, many people and many cultures have different types of healing. Some people will go to Buddha, Muhammad, Jehovah, Kuan Yin, Ganesh. And these are people of healers that actually live there. They're put in those positions to help Mother Earth in some level, in some way.
In the theory of one, being that we're all connected to God, we're all connected to each other. Whether you call God Allah or you call Buddha, or we're the thing I think for most people to understand is it's all the same thing.
Yes, true.
It's our Creator, the universe.
Correct.
God.
You can call God whatever you want to call him. And that is what the source and the power that people are doing in the conscious to conscious level. They're really trying to see that. And the reason why we have different names for God is because it makes people comfortable about what they think that is right for them and what is not.
Going back to the label, and you said in metaphysics, I'm going to go kind of back to
Correct.
What the other things. Now you mentioned mediumship and psychics and that. Are there anything else that are in that realm?
Oh yeah. Metaphysics has a big umbrella with a lot of different deities or modalities.
Okay.
So you can have psychics under there, Reiki healers, mediums, people who actually work with different type of vibrations. Even a life coach can be put under metaphysics.
Okay.
Now, the reason why we have these different types of healings that takes place is because in the 60s and 70s, calling it a cult, it was a way to push people away from these types of services that is handed to you by God. And it gave it that negative feeling or negative insight, and they said, well, we need to give it a positive spin because these services were working for humanity. And of course, if you put religion in it, if you believe in your religion, this is all wrong. What we do, what this community does, is all wrong because you have to follow what they say, whatever the process is. And if you went outside that culture, if you went outside that understanding, then, oh my God, you were condemned in every single way.
They being theologians and the religious dogma or the religious leaders.
Anybody that follows the religious or whatever the religious type.
Now, I want to make you're really a distinction right now. You're saying that when I say the word religious dogma, we're not necessarily speaking out against religion or God. No, we're not. What are we talking about then?
What we're doing is we're saying that there's more than to religion than what you see and what you think.
Okay.
Religion is basically a controlling situation or a mindset so you can think a certain way. There is nothing wrong with that faith. If you're a faithful Baptist, if you're a faithful Methodist, you can follow that trait. But also what we do in metaphysics is we teach you that there's more to that than what you see.
Okay.
A religion teaches you only to think one level in one way. And they want you to think that way throughout your whole entire life. When you deal with metaphysics or the spirituality of metaphysics, we open the door for you so you can see more multiple things.
So getting outside the box.
Getting outside the box, getting yourself in a different way, helping you to really encourage you to really open up your mindset so you can see things in a different light. Because the more and more that you do that, the more and more understanding of not only religion, but also spirituality, but it's the major understanding about yourself. And you really need to learn about yourself. Religion has been around for thousands of years, and I don't think that we'll ever get away from it. But I also see that there's now this cultural awakening that's happening right now where people are seeing outside of the religion and they're seeing what else is out there.
You're saying outside the religion, and I do want to make this statement because although I'm early in my awakening, in my current spiritual journey, I've come a long way. But when you say getting outside that religion, what I have found means getting inside yourself.
That's true. Getting inside yourself and try to find who you are. I have a lot of friends that were raised Catholic. They now they're now Baptists, but they go to a Methodist church, but at the same time they follow Jewish religion.
Mm-hmm.
When they were growing up, they were only told you can only follow one religion and nothing else.
Right.
But as they became mature and started seeing all these different alignments with different things, they said, we have to go outside of that.
Sure.
What do we need to do? And then as they continue doing their personal research and really try to look more, they noticed that a lot of this fell in different types of category. And then all of a sudden they said, what is metaphysics? They started thinking like, what's going on?
So what else is out there?
What else is out there? Metaphysics really helps you to embrace all that we're talking about and more. That's what it actually does. It allows you to open the doors so you can have an outside thinking about what else is out there.
It was my, start of the journey, and what opened my mind, and the reality that my awakening to higher truth, it was through my study of near-death experience and out-of-body experience.
Oh, yeah.
And the things that I've learned that's in common with these near-death experiences, because that was the only way that I knew that I could verify at the stage that I was at, really what happened in the spiritual realm.
Yes, and I do understand that and do believe that. The thing that I've learned about healers, and I'm calling healers people under the metaphysics umbrella, a lot of them had some kind of experience that gave them the awakening.
Mm-hmm.
What basically happened with that person is they were following the trade of religion because they were either raised or they were told, or this is what it is. But there was something in their lives that gave them that wake-up call, that gave them that understanding that there's something else out there that's helping me. But they didn't know what it was or how to see it. Now, if I want to open up more to the audience and to you, Stephen, one thing that happened to me is I do remember the 4th of July where I was actually walking into my apartment and somebody hit me over the head with a bat. And the next thing I know, I woke up tied up in my bathtub, upside down, and my mouth was bleeding. And I was robbed. Basically, I was robbed. I was tied up. Everything was taken away from me. But, it shocked me, but at the same time, it awoke me. It made me realize that there's something deeper inside of me more than anything else. And it was a very tragic situation. I remember that after the fact, I had a lot of cops over at my place in the apartment. They were questioning me in every way, how. Pictures were going. They were untying me. Blood was all over the place. Everything was gone through my apartment. And yes, I could have been bitter and mad and try to get even. And how are we going to do this? And I could have really been in this negative ball. I do remember for a solid week, I couldn't sleep in my bed. I literally slept in the middle of the living room on the floor because I didn't want to touch nothing. And I left it there in that moment. But the reason I'm bringing this story to you and your audience is because it gave me an awakening. It gave me an understanding that there has to be something else. Because I promise you, it could have gone the other way. And I saw it go the other way. If the guy holds a knife to you and your mouth is bleeding and you're tied up and he keeps on saying to you, I'm going to kill you, something was stopping it. Something was preventing it from going to that point. And it could have been because of my either spirituality, maybe my religion thought, maybe my opening that I had at the time that really helped me and protected me. In some way, somehow, there was something going on. So I know I had to believe in something outside of what my religion was. Because I promise you, that could have gone the wrong way.
Pausing right there for a minute, and this podcast is primarily about changing the mindset and focus on positivity, and we'll end up in a spiritual journey. But what you said right there was very important on a basic, fundamental thinking level, and that's you chose at that point to focus on the positive side of this event. So many people that hang on to hurts of the past, that suffer from PTSD and depression, and they struggle with negativity, oftentimes without really knowing it. In their subconscious, we hang on to these events and we replay them in our mind over and over again as a negative event.
That is correct, because that's what we're taught to do. We're taught that any tragedy that happens in your life, you need to go negative about it. We are told to do that. And we see it in movies, television shows. We see it in radio. broadcasting, we always live on the negative side
That's
of it.
how we get that victim mentality.
Correct. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided at that time, I'm not going to live that way. But there has to be something stronger.
Okay.
Something kept me alive.
Sure.
Something told me that I have to go beyond what was going on. And with my experience in religion, my understanding of spirituality, and the tragedy that happened in my life, it gave me that awakening. It told me that I am more valuable on Mother Earth more than anything else. So I have to do something with this. And this is where it pushed that envelope for me.
Okay.
Big time. And I saw that I had to do something. Because at that time, a lesson that I learned, I'm not the only one going through this. So I have to do something to help. And yes, I could have been selfish and go negative and try to find that person and shoot him down and everything. But then I started looking at myself. It's like, what am I going to get from it? What is really going to happen to me? So this is where my awakening, my spirituality started getting stronger. The best healers are the ones who have gone through some kind of tragedy, because it helped them to create themselves and relearn what they're really about.
Well, one of the things that I understand now, looking back, rather than, because I had that victim mentality. Mm-hmm. And I've been through my own walk, as we all do. We all have our own walk. But once I was able to come to terms with the fact that those things in my life that affected me the most there were lessons to be learned.
Correct.
And instead of staying kind of stuck in the mud, if you will, and reliving those events and looking at the negative, when I was finally able to find the lesson in that and realize that instead of being the tragedy
mm-hmm.
that I thought it was,
mm-hmm.
it ended up ultimately being a blessing.
Yes.
For my growth.
Oh, yeah. And me thinking, I still think, every time we come to the 4th of July, I always think of that situation that happened to me. But, and I kind of step back, and maybe this is selfish, or maybe this is maybe not me trying to understand what happened. It's like, I look at it like it really gave me that boost and encourage. Now, I think of my life during that time period. Yes, I was a typical, normal person, negative this and negative that, and I hate everybody in the world. And maybe it took that shake-up mm-hmm. to make me connect, to make me understand that I have to incorporate religion, or maybe spirituality, or maybe the understanding of both. And then I had to go beyond that. Mm-hmm. I had to really see what metaphysics is about.
So you were marrying them together?
I was marrying together mm-hmm. and really putting together. And to this day, I still think about it. And, even though it went wrong or tried to go wrong, I'm kind of happy it went through. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of happy I went through it.
And you're still here.
And I'm still here, yay. It taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about who I am and what I'm about and what I'm seeing. People get lessons every day, but some people listen and some people do not.
Right.
And the ones who go through tragedy is Spirit's way of saying, do something about it. You need to change.
That's very interesting.
And if you don't want to do it, I'm going to put you in a position to make you do it.
And you have to continue to relearn those same lessons over and over again until you do.
Until you get it.
There may be different forms.
Correct.
But it's the same lesson.
Correct.
Okay. Correct.
That's why if you have friends or companions or people that why do they keep getting in the same car accident? I have a very good friend who a couple of years ago, for a solid year, he was in 6 car accidents.
Oh my goodness.
And I remember he came to see me like in October, and he was crying to me, and I said, so what's the problem? So he explained to me what happened. And then first thing out of my mouth, I went, so when are you going to learn the lesson? And of course, he blew up in every way you could think of. But once he calmed down and understood what I was trying to say to him, he kind of scratched his head a little bit, and he goes, that's a good point. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
And once he understood his lesson and what he was going through, and once we talked and counseled and really see things in a different light, he had an aha moment.
Well, sure. None of us want to really admit that we're wrong, so we avoid that. We find the fault in everybody else.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's human 101. We all do that. But it was his problem or the situation that took place where he finally got it.
Ricardo, you mentioned a while ago during this event you kind of found your direction.
Correct.
And so would you talk to us about what that was? What did that evolve to?
What that did, it put me in a position that I have to pursue metaphysics. Because during that time period in my life, maybe I would say about 8 months before the event, I was like, okay, I'm studying this, what this is about. And I was a typical human, what is it? What are we doing? And I was walking Mother Earth, walking around, doing the things that I needed to do in life. But I kept on questioning, what is it about? What is it about? What is it about? And even though I was doing the studying and the learning, and I was getting in groups and talking to people in that level, I still had that self-doubt. I still had that, I'm going crazy just like everybody said.
Sure, because you hadn't learned how to really, truly apply it.
Correct. And finally, I remember maybe about a month before that time period, I remember going, okay, God, you... I'll bring it on if you want me to, or show me how to learn, or what do I need to do?
Open yourself up.
Open myself. How do I do this? Okay. I asked the God Almighty, I was like, okay. So, bam, this took place. And it gave me that awakening. It gave me that I have to understand and put it and pursue it in my mind. It was there. But I was a typical normal human. What is this about? Anything that we feel that puts us in an uncomfortable position, or it puts us in something that we don't understand, we quickly shy away from it.
Oh, sure.
Instead of learning about it and growing from it.
So you said this took place. Tell me about what is this?
The actual event, the actual me being tied up and put in that position.
So that was the awakening.
That was my awakening. That was my position, because I asked God a month earlier, how are you going to awaken me? What do you need to show me to get me into that position?
Well, what did you ultimately do with that?
I took the information after that. I cleaned myself up. And then I told God, I accept the gift that you have given me. And I will pursue and do anything that you want me to do to help others, help myself, and help people around me. And as soon as I had that one-to-one conversation with God, all of a sudden, these gifts that I keep talking about, that I kept going up and down and like a roller coaster ride, it finally just came together. And I accepted and I appreciated and I moved on with it. And ever since, I have not looked back. I do see what happened to me. And to me, it's a God gift, because it gave me that awakening. But I was the one asking, what, who, where, why, how, what's going on? How do I do this? And I was the one repeating those questions. And on spirituality level, Spirit was going, okay, we're going to listen to you, and we're going to get that information to you. Now, of course, we all want easy peasy to get our information. Every person I know, but it doesn't work that way.
It's a grind.
It's right. It's life 101.
I think that's a point that I want to make to our audience, especially those that are going through something right now. For those people that want to fundamentally make a change in their life, that are trying to overcome negativity and doubts and fears, and that is, number one, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there's something better for you.
Oh yeah, there is.
The other thing is though, and I've talked about this, and we'll continue to talk about this, is that once you finally increase your awareness, once you finally accept responsibility for where you're at in your life, for your own thoughts and your own actions, you can change it. You can turn it around. Yeah. But you have to be willing to put the work in. You do. And you also have to give yourself the permission to accept it. And that's where people fail a lot. Because they do, I know a lot of people who do the readings of the books, and they do the studying. And nowadays we have YouTube. You could do a YouTube on and try to find out what's going on. But are you willing to accept it? And once you give yourself the permission to accept it, then you will be able to move further into it. But you have to be ready for it, because one thing that will happen is going to change your life. And it's going to change your life in every level that you can think of. Sure. I know at first, it's really hard. It's hard for me when I first came to this realization and I've started to open myself up. It stirred a lot of things up inside me. Oh, yeah. It made me uncomfortable. Oh, yeah. I was scared. It brought a lot of things to the surface that ultimately I had to happen for me to come to terms with it.
Correct.
For me to learn how to truly go back and forgive. For
Correct.
me to be able to deal with the past wounds.
Yeah, and that's something that I think that scares a lot of people when they open up to this level, because they really have to get some old feelings and old situations out and out. You know, we've learned to block and bottle it up. We've learned to put it in the back of our minds. We've learned that. But when you get that awakening, when you get that spirituality, when you receive that connection from ultimate God, you have to go through your life and remember what happened back in the day, or what you did right or what you did wrong. You're going to have to awaken that, because you're going to have to learn and teach yourself to release it and let it go. And that's a very hard thing to do for people.
It's very hard, but it's very important.
It's very important. So if you did something back when you were 16 years old, or you did something when you were 27, or did something at 30, it's going to come back. But it's not going to come back to hurt you. It's going to come back so you can be reminded, so you can let it go. You have to go deep within yourself to really let it go. And yes, Stephen did a very good understanding of this. You're going to have to teach yourself to forget. But also, a problem that people have a lot is, as you go around forgiving everybody, you also have to forgive yourself.
Yes.
Because you were part of the process. You were part of that thing that took place.
Yes.
You know, if you did a robbery back in the day, if you robbed a convenience store, you were a part of that robbery. You cannot blame your friends and your buddies and your whatever. You were a part of that.
Forgiving yourself means that you release yourself from that burden of guilt.
Correct. And that's where your spirituality heals, protects, and grows.
Okay.
And you really have to go into that process. It is a very tough thing to do, and people don't want to go there. I don't want to remember what I did back when I was 21 years old. I don't want to go there. I've moved on from it.
There's a lot of things I don't want to remember. I love to forget, but you can't avoid it.
Yeah, you can't avoid it. But sometimes you're going to have to awaken that, so you can love and forgive and prosper from it. And oh well, you did it. That was part of your world, part of your lesson, part of your process of what got you to where you're at right now.
It's not what defines you.
No, it doesn't define you at all. But see, we live in a constant world that we're constantly doing that definition. And we have to get out of that thinking.
Labels and definitions. And then
religion. The list goes on and on.
Well, tell me, in the listeners, then, exactly what are your gifts, and how do you use that?
No problems at all. Well, after I got my awakening that I've been discussing with everybody, one of the things that was very powerful with me is I'm a professional psychic. Also a medium, which basically means I speak to the dead. And then I also do tarot card readings. Yes, I do multiple other things. I do a lot of physical healings. I do Reiki. I'm a Riki Master. I also learn how to do candle work, how to work with incense, vibrations. And yes, I was raised as a Catholic, and I still do a rosary. I still do that, because it makes me feel very good by doing that. It helps me to connect to Mother Mary. So these gifts have been given to me, and I have decided that I'm going to present it to the people around me. And it helps me to help them. A lot of people that come to me is because they're needing some kind of advice, from either of a mental advice, a spiritual advice, or maybe some kind of connection. And because of the gifts that I have, I'm able to do that. And yes, I've had it for years. Yes, I went through my tragedy. Yes, I did every book reading you could think of. Yes, I got my degree. But also, I had to put all the factors together. And when I finally gave myself the permission to give that, then this is where I went forward.
So you're able to actually, let's just say as an example, communicate with people's loved ones who have gone on in the spirit.
Correct. That's a medium. So I do a lot of medium work. I could speak to the dead. And the way that was found is, I remember I would lay many times in bed, woken up in the middle of the night, and I didn't know what that was, but there was somebody talking to me. Now, I live alone, okay, and I know there's nobody in my house. I know that for a fact. But who's speaking to me? And yes, I did the typical normal, got out of bed, looked around, make sure I locked the doors, make sure nobody was in the home. And there was nobody around. But what is this? So this is where the mediumship came through. I accepted, I respected it, and I decided I'm going to go with it.
Now, for a lot of our listeners who, this is kind of something new for them, I want to just clarify, because there's really no such thing as death. Our body dies, our body
Correct.
goes away, but our soul continues on in another realm.
Correct. In the belief of metaphysics, you have a vessel, which is the body that you're in right now. That vessel will expire at some point or some time. But what leads the vessel to do what it needs to do on a mental, emotional level is your spirituality. Your spirit will continue living. And your spirit has been around for either hundreds of years or thousands of years, depending on what needs to happen. So when you hurt, when you're crying, when you have pain, when you have an emotion of eating or laying in bed or getting sick, it is the spirit that's working with the emotion. And they come together to do what needs to happen for the vessel, which is the physical body that you have. Now, bodies expire, and you have multiple lives. That's what we call it. But the multiple lives is actually your spirit that lives from body to body.
And reincarnation.
Reincarnation. Now, yes, it is a fact that if you're a man, you could come back as a woman. And yes, it is a fact that if you're a woman, you could come back as a man. And yes, it is a fact that you could come back as a dog or a cat or a horse or a snake. You can come into that level.
So those souls do occupy other forms.
Correct. All beings, all living beings, have an internal soul. Whether that's a cricket or your next door neighbor or a friend, a companion, or your dog or your cat. They all have spirits. So when they act and react to whatever the action you're doing, it's the emotional and spiritual level that is tying together that's creating the emotion, the feeling.
That's very interesting. That's a lot for a lot of people.
It is a lot to comprehend. Yeah. Because, again, I'll go back to religion at this point. We're taught some religions teach you no such thing. Some, don't do that, blah, blah, blah.
And we start talking about reincarnation, people just glaze over.
Oh, I know. They glaze over and they're like, what? Like the Buddhists believe that everything has energy. Everything has a soul, including a desk, a pen, a piece of paper, your clothes. They believe that it all has it. Your glasses, whatever. That's what they believe.
Wow.
In metaphysics, we believe that everything is soul-based, which basically means you're running your body because this is a soul that's doing what it needs to do. And this is where that umbrella of metaphysics falls into.
Well, because we're limited on time, and I know you're going to be back and we'll discuss other topics. I've got a couple things I'd like to touch on. On that note, when we talk about being reincarnated, when we're talking about, that this vessel expires. And really, when you look at it in terms of the actual time we spend here on Earth versus eternity, it's just a drop in the bucket. It's a drop in the ocean.
Oh, yeah.
But that being said, what is the purpose of having to come back? What is the purpose of our life here on Earth?
Well, basically what's going on is you're learning lessons. Lessons so your spirit can grow and prosper and become more vibrant and more of a higher vibration.
For what purpose?
So you can actually go into a higher being, into the universe, because we're all going to be escalated. We're all going to go either into heaven or what we call heaven, and we're going to be either sainthood, or we're going to become an angel, or we're going to be something that's going to help humanity or the universe.
Because there are various realms of heaven.
Correct.
And so this, I refer to, and I've heard many other people refer to our life here on Earth as a soul school.
That's what's going on. Think of it this way. Let's say that you decide that you want to go back to school and you want to get your master's degree. Well, if you really think about it, to get a master's, you have to take that class and this class and go to this counselor and everything. And then all of a sudden, you got your master's. Well, think of it as a master's in spirituality. So everything you're going through in your life, you're going so you can develop that master's so you can go and get ascended.
Very good analogy. Very good.
So that's basically what you're going through. Okay. Now, a lot of people argue me down and they go, well, then why did I go through this? And why did that happen? Or how come I'm always this? I said, that's part of your
'Cause you're
training.
supposed to learn.
You're supposed to learn that process. That's why you're doing that and going through.
That's awesome. Well, then let me ask you this, because there's a lot of people right now listening that we may be blowing their mind.
Oh, of course, yeah, I feel it.
and there's a lot of people though, right now that are open. They need change. They want change. They're looking for something. They're just at the beginning of their journey. They're like, listen. Right now, I'm just trying to get out of this negative mindset. I'm just trying to change my way and find the positive in everyday life, which, by the way, I think is important. We do have to take this in steps.
Oh, of course,
yes. It is a journey. But let me ask you this. The conversation we're having about your gifts, about these things that are possible, about these things that are really hard to comprehend, how can the regular person right now, at the basic level, going, I need a change in my life. I'm not happy with the way things are going right now, and I know this is not it for me. How can they incorporate any of what we're talking about right now into their daily life and their self-improvement? There's
something that I teach, and I counsel a lot of people. People come to me for readings or counseling. And there's something that I keep saying over and over again. I literally knock it in people's heads. If you really want to shift your life right now without doing the studying and learning more and trying to find different people and in groups, the number one thing you could do right now is stay positive. Period. If you could do that simple thing, be positive in whatever happens in your life, your life will shift in so many levels. It's not even funny. It is that simple. If people could just do that.
Well, now hold on, Ricardo, because I hear you say it's simple.
Right.
And I know it's simple.
It's very simple.
But it doesn't feel so simple.
Because that's what religion taught us. Not to make it simple.
Okay.
If you really think about it, I'm a very Catholic. The first thing that the priest says, you're bad, you're being condemned, you're no good. They're saying that in front of all these people. Mm-hmm. Like they have a prayer that they actually do. It's my fault, it's my fault, it's all my fault.
Wow.
Here I am in the Catholic Church and the priest is saying it's my fault, it's all my fault, my fault. And you're supposed to pound your chest.
So you walk away feeling guilty already.
Correct. Mm-hmm. So how positive is that? When you hear that. So if I always encourage people, and yes, I've had multiple people who come to me in that level going like, positive? What do you mean? Blah, blah, blah,
I got this going on and
that going on.
Yeah, I got that going on.
But I'd say, just stay positive. If you stay positive, it will go away. Because negative will not live in positive.
Mm. That's something that when I work with people, that I teach them. And this is really the reality. That we really create most of our own problems.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Honestly,
definitely.
And that negative mindset, that negative reaction, that the negative way of thinking a lot of times leads our actions towards the negative.
Yes.
Therefore, the negative outcome. Therefore, the drama in our life.
Correct.
Therefore.
Now, I want you to think of this.
Okay.
And maybe this will help a lot of people, a lot of your audience. When we have a 1-year-old child. Now, how does the 1-year-old child learn to hate people? It's because they were taught to think negative.
Mm. Yeah.
So now you have this child at the age of 4, and you teach it that broccoli is no good. How come you didn't allow the child to learn that on their own? Mm. So we're a society that we build negativity all the way up. Did you know that a 2-year-old hears the word no 10,000 times before they reach the age of 2?
Wow.
So you're knocking negative in this person already. And then as they grow, they become teenagers. No, don't do that. Oh, you better do that. Or you better listen to me. We're pounding the thinking of the individual as they grow up. Why do we want to control that child in that way?
One of the parallels that I draw sometimes when working with people is in talking about a child learning. Is let's say, for instance, that my mother was colorblind, okay? And she taught me that this object was pink.
Okay.
And she didn't know if it was pink or not. Turns out that this is what everybody knows as green. But she teaches me at a young age that this green item is pink. I don't know any better. All I know is I learned that this green item is pink. So I grow up thinking this is pink. And I think in a lot of ways that's what happens in religion is you're taught that this is the way to think. You're taught that this is what that is. So therefore, that is your reality.
Correct.
And unfortunately, that is your only reality until you open your mind and get outside.
Correct.
That.
And a lot of those religions teach you to think negatively about yourself and others. And then when I come and I encourage people to think positive, they quickly go like, why? They quickly go into that mentality. Why are you telling me to think positive?
Isn't that crazy that you get more pushback for just trying to teach people to be positive?
I know. I tell them, look, I want you to spend your day tomorrow. When they come to me, I say, spend your day tomorrow thinking positive. And they're going like, oh, I'm not going to do that. I have a bad relationship. I have a bad boss. You know, my dog hates me. Yeah. My back hurts. My dog bit me last night. You know, I'm hearing all this. And I'm like, give it a positive twist.
Yes.
Give it a positive. That's all you have to do. Do that. And you don't have to do it all day. You could do it for 5 or 10 minutes. And I promise you that 5 and 10 minutes becomes an hour, and then it becomes a half a day, and the next thing you know, it's that afternoon. And you become very positive. If we can take the time to think negative about something, we could take the time to think positive about something.
That is so powerful. That is more powerful than what most people can even comprehend.
That is true.
It is simple as a thought. And by the way, I want to point out to our listeners that it's really one of the only things in life that we can actually control.
That's true. That is true. You can control that mindset, that mind thinking.
Yeah, we don't have much control about a lot of things in life, but you can take control of the mind.
Correct.
Like Napoleon Hill said, take control of your mind, of your own mind and the way.
Correct. And that's something that I always teach a lot to people is that if you want it, you can have it, but you have to control it in mindset. And when you control it in mindset, you will receive it. But it's up to you whether you want to do that or not.
That's amazing, Ricardo. Well, I'll tell you what, I think that's a good place to leave our listeners.
Yes, it is.
It's a good place to leave them because that is my assignment to the listeners today. For the next 2 weeks, my challenge to you is to wake up every morning and find a reason to be thankful. Spend 5 minutes every day for the next 2 weeks being thankful for something. And I promise you, the fact that you woke up is reason enough.
Oh, I agree.
And so, Ricardo, I would like for you, before we sign off, to talk to me and the listeners and tell us about how they can contact you. Tell us a little bit about your business and how they can find out more about what you have to offer and explore their gifts.
No problems at all. I actually have a website called findingyourlifepath.com, and you can actually just Google that or find my name. I also have a small school, which is an Austin Metaphysical Academy. And you could go to the website, which is austinmetaphysicalacademy.com, and where we can actually encourage you, teach you, mentor you, mold you. I also do a lot of private readings and private events, a lot of situations, so you can always find me in Central Texas somewhere. And you're more than welcome to get in contact with me in several different ways. I really encourage people to really learn outside of themselves. And something I always do is I always work very positively. So that's always good. So find me by my website, findingyourlifepath.com, or you could go to my academy and learn more information from austinmetaphysicalacademy.com. And I promise you, connect with me, and I will help as much as I can.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for being on the show, and I really hope you'll be on the show again in the near future.
Thank you, Stephen. I really enjoyed this. This is a great afternoon.
Thank you, Ricardo.
Yes.
All right. Mind Hostage fans, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back to you next week with a new podcast series on Mind Hostage, going through the different steps and stages of changing your mindset. Have an awesome and blessed day.
Loved what you've heard on this week's episode? Well, the answer is simple. It would mean the world to us if you could head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review and feedback. Spreading the word really is the best way to grow our podcast and achieve even greater things. Thank Thank you.